So I was talking yesterday with Rachel Peters, who's been involved with me in Yogahealer for about a decade. We were talking yesterday, and we were supposed to do this podcast on the niyamas and for detox, and I had forgot, and so when we did our podcast, we really just kind of went off into just the depth of the experience of that. And in any case, she was like, you should do, because I was asking her what I should do for my next free talk, and she's like, you should do the niyamas and that thing that you were going to do, and like identity evolution and how all that works. And I was thinking about it because I have to do a free talk, doing one every month. Basically, that's what we're trying to do right now. And this was for the basically for people that want to live life at the next level. Like that's the who I was talking to, and I had just kicked off this peak performers. Basically, it's a club I'm creating. It's a VIP club, and I'm taking a few people in it, and it's expensive, and it's insane ROI. That's the idea. So it's not for ordinary people. It's for people who are already really interested in peak performance. And anyway, so I thought, well, yeah, we'll just do the rules for peak performance from yoga philosophy, which is the niyamas. So this was the picture I sent to Rachel originally. This is the picture of the niyamas. Basically, someone shooting a bow and arrow at a target, and it says, and where the arrow is shooting, it says discipleship to the target. So people get confused about the word discipline. I don't think peak performers get confused about the word discipline. I feel like they, in order to get to there has to be an up-leveling of the relationship between the human being. And so with that, what happens is that up-leveling, you don't see it as a hardship. You see it as a positive stressor. And the positive stressors is eustress versus distress, which is a negative stressor. In distress, that destroys the body. In Ayurveda, we'd say usually with distress that's caused by vata or pitta, it's caused by wind or fire. It's caused by basically like trying to do too many things, having too much trauma, and the overwhelm that comes from just not living in right relationship to flow, essentially. So there's definitely a flow component here. So what are the ground rules for peak performance? What are the niyamas, and where does that fit into yoga philosophy? I should talk about that before we get into what these rules are. And by rules, it's like, what are rules? Are they laws? Are they just laws of nature? And I would say, yeah, probably that's what we're talking about, that there's laws of nature, and maybe this would be a better title for this, and maybe we'll change it. So it's like laws of nature for peak performance. I don't know. Rules probably sounds better. So the niyamas are rules. They really are. They're precepts, meaning like if you want to do that, this comes before, right? Concept, precept, right? So they're the precepts to the practice of asana, which comes next in the 8-limb path of yoga. So there's yamas and there's niyamas, and yamas are more of like how you are with everybody else. Like, let's get that straight first, because when you move from a field of intelligent connectedness, things move from the whole to the parts. Of course, you're going to start with you and everybody else. It's kind of like how all the cells get along in your body. Well, that's you. You're more than one, right? You're the multiplicity. Well, the same thing comes to community. Like if you actually stopped and think about it for a hot minute, you'd realize that, yeah, you probably left alone without community would die pretty quickly, right? So that's how that works. Whereas the community could probably, I'm sorry, but they could probably survive without you, right? Me too. I get it. So the niyamas are the precepts to the self. This is you and you, right? This isn't you and everybody else. This is you or you and the universe. This is you and the universe within you. How do you conduct yourself in the universe within you? Because you're complicated. Human beings are complex, and there's an elegant simplicity behind the complexity. And that's what the niyamas help do. And say, okay, here's the rules. Now, for those of you who are rebels, who are rebellious, and I get that, that's good. It means you're high in openness, right? So when you're high in openness, what you have to really do is find your own interpretation from the universal law. Like why have these teachings survived thousands of years? If there's a curiosity in that. is curiosity and why the biblical story survives thousands of years, right? Start to look for what you don't already know, and you'll find that there's a utility in knowing it, right? That's the goal here. Okay, so niyamas, and the first one, notably, especially following up on, we've been talking a lot about detox lately, because detox is a ritu charya. It falls under the niyamas under saucha, right? Like keep it clean, keep a clean machine, right? Keep a clean engine, keep your car clean, keep your house clean, keep your room clean. Jordan Peterson always says, clean up your room. And where do you start? You clean up your room. Well, your room is cellular, and it's complex, and there's an elegant simplicity underneath the complexity. And the cleaner you run, the more energy efficient everything becomes, because you're living in that elegant simplicity. Now, that's an evolutionary line, meaning that like you never master that. Like you always get better. Like BKS Iyengar, when he died, after spending, I don't know, hours on his mat for what, 6 decades, something like that, 7 decades, right? Like he wasn't done yet. The man wasn't done yet, right? He was like stoked that he got to build on his wisdom. And that's what unfolds when you have saucha. So if your cells are dirty, and one way to know is if you have chronic systemic inflammation. Yup, podcast listeners, you knew that one was coming. You did. Yeah, if you've got any of that, and I mean, the easiest way to tell is you wake up and you're lethargic, heavy, groggy, grumpy, any of those. Doesn't have to be all of them. If you're hitting all of them, your cells are really dirty. So then everything's inefficient, and then you're just developing disease, you're in distress, the whole physiology is not running like it's designed to run. So rules for peak performance, you want to think about this, you guys. Number 1 is keep it clean. Keep it clean. And if it's not clean, clean it up. And that goes for every aspect of life. It goes into subtle relationship. If there's anything in relationship that's not clean. Like I had this weird thing happen this week where we were going to buy a condo from our friend, and we did, it was moving forward fast. And then I was like, well, to buy that condo, I need to sell this other condo. And this is down here in Mexico, actually where I'm recording right now from my patio. And anyways, I put it out there to sell my other condo, and I was like going to go for it because I would just witness the whole crazy real estate thing in the West, and I was like, real estate's kind of wild right now. So I was going to charge. I was going to sell it for more than anyone had ever sold a condo down here before, and I was going to do that easily and quickly. And like, sure enough, I had a buyer within, I don't know, it took me about, let me think, from idea to buyer, from like first concept that we might sell it to actually finding the buyer at the price, because it was a firm price. It was like a month, maybe, something like that. And I didn't really try too hard, like really. So anyways, then the other condo owner pulls out. And so now I have someone that's like ready to buy my condo at top dollar. And I can't buy the other one. And it felt weird. Like I couldn't read the energy, and he wasn't responding to me. And this guy's a friend. He's an old friend. And I was like, what is up? Right. And I've got to move that to the quickest resolution possible. Right. Because otherwise it clutters up. Right. If it's opposite of clean is dirty. It's dirty. And the word for that in Sanskrit, because some of you like that stuff, is dukkha. And its opposite on the spectrum is sukha. So saucha and sukha, that's related. In Yoga Sutras, they're like, the body should be sukha. Like there should be an ease in the physiology. And it comes from the interconnectedness of intelligence, which is prana, which is the life force energy, which moves through the breath. All right, so if the breath body's a mess, clean it up. That's saucha. If the physical cells are a mess because you're eating too much, saucha. Clean it up. Clean it up and watch the magic happen. That's the rule of niyama. So peak performers, like quick assessment. What do you need to clean up? And clean it up. Clean up the stuff in relationships. If there's anything you don't have clean lines going, clean it up. And then watch the magic happen. Because what happens is you develop no tolerance. You develop no tolerance for dukkha, which, yes, is the name of my cat, because he's a dirty boy, because his coloring of his coat, he's a ginger tabby, but he looks like he just emerged from a fireplace. So I had to name him Dukkha, because I'm like, dude, you are so dirty. He always looks, people are like, why is your cat always dirty? I'm like, nope, he's clean. He's just in the illusion of it. Okay, I move on. Let's talk about Santosha. So where Saucha was clean up your act, right? Santosha is like be chill, like be contented. Be contented. And being contented, it's on all levels. It's an interesting translation, san and tosha. And so san is like this, it's like kind of like pan, like panoramic. It's complete, pandemic, right? It's whole, it's the whole thing. Panoramic, right? It's like the whole sky, entire, complete, all together, contented. So all the parts are content. It's not like the body's happy because the body's nice and fit and the relationships are a freaking mess, right? Or it's not like whatever, money's coming in, but it's on unsure foundation. It's like, no, like the whole thing's integrated on a level. And by the whole thing, you could look to the kosha model, like and that's just a model from Ayurveda and yoga that's somewhat helpful. And it's just basically saying, like, think of it as your consciousness is a knife, and there's these sheaths that wrap around the knife, and there's 5 of them, and one of them is the physical body, right? And that's the most dense. That's earth element. The other one that's a little bit more plasticky than that is water element, and that's your energy body. The next one in is fire, and that's your mind. The next one in is intuition, and that's air. And then the subtle of the subtle is pulsating bliss, which is that ease that we were talking about before, which what happens with Saucha. Well, it also happens with Santosha. You also get contentment on all levels. Bada bing on a bada boom. But those 5 levels have to be integrated. If you don't have Saucha, which is why numbers matter in this stuff. I mean, the numbers make it easier to remember. There's 5 niyamas, there's 5 yamas, there's 5 niyamas. We're not talking about the yamas today. On the Eightfold Path of Yoga, those are the 2 folds. First two, right? First you take care of you and everyone else, and then you take care of you on the inside. So what's cool is the cleaner you are in the inside, the more you can keep those channels open between you and everybody else. And so then the niyamas kick up a notch. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about contentment. So this to me says that ease, and I wrote a chapter on it in Body Thrive in my first book, like easeful living is a habit. It's a habit. It becomes a steady state of choice making, but it's when it's like I tell people now, like if you want to meditate, like if you really want to, if you're wanting to meditate to change your state of consciousness, and help reorganize your awareness at better levels of relaxed focus, like that's a good idea. Sure, why not? So how to go about that? I would do like 1 minute timers 10 times a day, as opposed to like sitting for 10 minutes in the morning, because you'll have a better practice. This has actually been studied. Some of the integral people looked at this, like Jeff Carrera looked at this in particular. Yeah, he's a knowledgeable cat when it comes to meditation and different states of consciousness. So entirely contented. That's rule number 2. Like, how bad is that? That's pretty badass. If you ask me, you'd just be like, you got to be chill in all your bodies. That means you've got to be totally dropped into the blissful pulsation of the inhale and exhale and the morning and night and the rhythm underlying everything. That feels good when you're in there and you're clean. I mean, when you're not clean, and that goes back to obviously Saucha, you saw that one coming. When you're not clean, none of this works. Like none of this stuff turns on. And so it's harder to feel the pulsation of life. It's harder to feel bliss. You're just running a different operating system. And it's in the sympathetic nervous system, which means the body is aging. So that's dumb. Don't do that. All right, so then what happens next? Well, if you clean up your act and then you're chill and contented, you can focus your direction, and that's tapas. This is aligned action. And to me, this is really fascinating when you think about it. Like, if you're not relaxed, you can't really aim well. Why? Because you're being kind of toxically neurotic, something like that. So you're too distracted to make good decisions and to aim. It's like too distracted to aim your target, right? To like really take, and it's not, I mean, is it time? Take the time to truly identify the target. The interesting thing that I've learned in business and planning is like, yeah, it does seem to happen in the field of time. Does it get more spontaneous and automated and fluid? It can. I believe it can. I believe it can. Benjamin Hardy, his first book, many of you guys know him, but he had a first little ebook before he published as an author, and it was all about this time and wormholes in time. And so there are people that talk about it. They talk about it in yoga, and because yoga goes into higher level states of human consciousness, they talk about the same stuff. So in any case, the vision becomes more clear, so you can see further. So you're in longer term planning. You're just naturally in longer term decision making. And so in the short term, you're operating in complete harmony with the vision of the long term. And that's the seamless process of aligned action. The yogis call that tapas because it's a burning desire to hit that target. The burning desire to the specific goal. It's saying like, because I can see it and it's worth going after, I'll just go do that. That's tapas. And the why it's burning, because this is going to burn off any impurities that survive saucha. So like shit will go down, stuff will blow up, issues will surface with tapas, and that's how you know. That's how you know. You know, for me, I have issues around humility, so a lot of my lessons with tapas have been about like learning how to be humble. It wasn't well modeled for me from my dad. But that's cool. I learned a lot of other good stuff. Okay, now moving on to rules for peak performance. So we've done the first 3 rules, right? Clean up your act, be chill, and then aligned action. And then the fourth is, it's like, okay, turn up the juice. So that's svadhyaya. That's svadhyaya. Now, it's interesting in yoga numerology. So when they start numbering things, so there's 5 of these bad boys. When you start numbering these things, like if you just nail the first one, you've kind of got your bases covered because the rest will unfold. And that's where habit stacking, where like one thing as saucha becomes a habit, what arises as santosha. As santosha becomes a habit, what arises is tapas. What arises is like, oh, that's where I want to go. So what happens when you really clean up on your act on all levels, on your physical level, your energy level, your mental level, your intuitive level, your bliss body, right? You clean the bodies. What happens is contentment. That naturally arises. What happens when you're clean and content on all levels is you can see. You can see where you want to go, and then because there's nothing blocking you, there's no more resistance left, you actually go there. You go. Right? And then what happens out of that is you get even better at self-study. Svadhyaya naturally arises. Sva is self. Dhya is to learn something from yourself. Like learn from your experience. Learn from your experience and implement the changes. Don't learn and then do the same damn thing again. No, learn, evolve. That's Svadhyaya. So how does it happen? Is you start to look to the self for answers. And this skyrockets the intuitive body, which skyrockets velocity of relationship, which we may not talk about too much in this talk. Okay, so once you're looking to the self for answers, what happens is you awaken to the self's answers come from seemingly within and without. There seems to be these universal, an intelligence, a universal intelligence that seems to come into focus through one's actions. And that process, again, less resistance. It's seamless. There's nothing getting in the way, right? There's nothing getting in the way. Why? Because we've studied the self and we've realized what parts of the self are functional down to the habit and personality level, micro habit and micro personality level. And we've basically purified, it's another translation of saucha, because our awareness is higher in self-study, we've purified the rest of the resistance. And what happens is now we have total access to universal intelligence, and lucky for us, because the energy body's clear, universal energy. And that's a whole different ballgame, peak performers. That's a whole different ballgame. So let's see, you probably want to see pictures of Ishvara Pranidhana, this partnering with universal law, right? And universal energy, universal intelligence. There's a lot of different ways to say it. Different access points are like being in your back body, seeing through your third eye, and focusing on the long-term horizon. Yeah. What happens with chronic systemic inflammation, especially at the level of mind where you have overwhelm, where you're just in stress, you're in distress, not eustress. So the negative stressors in the mental body, which are so prominent in modern culture, is what happens is there's just a missing of the mark, and that's the translation of sin, right? And that's where you just like none of this stuff is happening, not aligning. Yeah. So that's it. Those are the rules for peak performers. I'm Cate Stillman, Yogahealer, and yeah, if you haven't done the peak performance quiz, you should. If you haven't talked to one of our peak performance coaches or one of our coaches at Yogahealer, which helps direct people into the right experience first for them with us, you should do that. So go to yogahealer.com/peak, and we'll go from